Good morning, Marijuana Nation. It's Monday, May 8th, 2017, and you're tuned in to episode 241 of Marijuana Today Daily. I'm your host, Shay Gunther, and I'll be walking you through today's marijuana news and headlines. As always, we have a full and busy day of cannabis news in our hands, so let's jump right into it. Our top story of the day brings us to Vermont, where the prospects of legislatively imposed marijuana legalization are inconceivably alive after this year's legislative session, slated to end on Friday, was extended after a compromise bill crafted by State Senator Dick Sears was put forth as a solution to the gap between a previous state legalization bill and a state House bill to do the same, albeit in a more reserved manner. The biggest difference between the two pieces of legislation was the fact that the state Senate version would set up a commercial retail system for legal adult use marijuana, while the House version is a more conservative measure that would simply legalize the adult use and possession of marijuana, as well as allowing for a small number of homegrown plants to be cultivated. The new compromise bill put forth on Friday would kick the question of launching a commercial market to a special commission tasked with studying the idea. The recommendations made by the special commission would be non-binding, which hopefully is a loose enough string to get state House members back on board. This story is changing by the day, so we'll report back as things progress. Our second top story of the day is more of a tie for first, with the Florida state legislature apparently having failed to pass any kind of medical marijuana legislation this year, despite the mandate voters handed them to do so when they passed the medical marijuana ballot initiative back in the fall. Friday marked the end of the state's legislative session, and with no medical marijuana bill finding enough support in both houses of legislature, the question of how to implement further reforms to the state system will be left to the Florida Department of Health. On Saturday, Florida attorney and medical marijuana activist John Morgan tweeted up a storm of discontent, asking Governor Rick Scott to call a special legislative session to pass medical marijuana legislation and attacking Ben Polera, head of the marijuana activist group United for Care. This is a good one to click over for the full read. As always, we have all the news we cover linked to on our website at mjtodaydaily.com and on our Twitter account at mjtodaydaily. Business Insider is a good story up about a comment made by President Donald Trump on Friday concerning medical marijuana. Specifically, President Trump released a signing statement attached to his signature of a $1.1 trillion omnibus spending bill that keeps the government funded through the end of September that directly addresses the so-called Rohrabacher-Blumenauer Amendment, previously known as the Rohrabacher-Farr Amendment, that prevents the federal government from spending any money cracking down on state legal medical marijuana businesses and patients. President Trump's statement read, quote, Division B, Section 537 provides that the Department of Justice may not use any funds to prevent implementation of medical marijuana laws by various states and territories. I will treat this provision consistently with my constitutional responsibility to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. Unquote. Our buddy Tom Angel over at Mass Roots, who is probably the mainstream press's most gone-to guy for thoughtful marijuana policy analysis, said that he thinks the president's statement means that he retains the right, through the arm of Attorney General Jeff Sessions and the Department of Justice, to target anyone in medical marijuana he so chooses, though Tom's doubtful this signals the start of a full-scale assault on the industry. This is another great one to click over and read in full. Those are our top stories for today. It's time for Marijuana Today Daily Headlines Blitz. Before we blitz out on headlines, let's quickly thank our sponsor, our annual listener survey. Yes, I am back again to harangue you to take a moment today to fill out our annual listener survey, which you can find at mjtodaydaily.com/survey. We're so close to hitting our target number of responses, and I need your help to get us there. If you haven't done so yet already, please open up mjtodaydaily.com/survey and take a minute or two and let us know how we're doing. It helps us understand our audience better, is vital in our work to secure new sponsors, and guides us as we evaluate the different parts of our show. If you think I could be doing better at any part of my job, the survey is the forum to express it. One last time, that's mjtodaydaily.com/survey. Take it today. All right, time for the Blitz. Late on Friday, news broke that the White House was planning on slashing the budget of their Office of National Drug Control Policy, or ONDCP, by 94%, all but shuttering the agency created by President Bush I that's long been a bane to progressive thinkers in drug policy. I've reported on the ONDCP a number of times in recent months as the White House first hired Pennsylvania Representative Tom Marino to take over for Acting Director Richard Baum, only to have the offer rescinded weeks later. It was Mr. Baum who broke the news to ONDCP staffers on Friday of the proposed cuts. Health Canada is now mandating that licensed medical marijuana providers test all of their products for banned pesticides. This is a long-running issue that regular listeners are well familiar with a number of testing and contamination scandals hitting the Canadian legal medical marijuana industry over the last year. The new policy change announced on Friday mandates that the nation's 43 licensed medical marijuana companies test all of their products for pesticides, whereas before it only required them to look for mold, heavy metals, and bacteria. Big progress in the Texas medical marijuana scene, with a state House committee voting on Friday to approve a proposed medical marijuana bill, freeing it up to be scheduled for a vote by the House at large. House Bill 3207 would allow registered patients to use low THC medical marijuana. Texas State House lawmakers have until May 11th to finalize their work on the bill if it has any chance of passing this year. On Friday, the New York State Department of Health released, for the first time, a list of all the doctors, nurse practitioners, and physician assistants willing to make public their willingness to take on medical marijuana patients. The 315 doctors listed represent just 32% of all registered medical marijuana practitioners. If you live in the Empire State and want to find the closest practitioner to you, swing over to the Times-Union for a link to the Department of Health's list. The Denverite has a good piece up examining the issues of homelessness, legal marijuana, and the booming Colorado economy. Various media reports have, at times, put forward the idea that a large number of homeless people have moved to Colorado to take advantage of legalized adult-use marijuana, putting strain on the state's resources budgeted for helping homeless and low-income folks out. The Denverite took the time to talk to Donald Burns, an expert on poverty and homelessness working at the University of Denver's School of Social Work, who says that the data he's seen makes him skeptical about the veracity of such reports. This is another good one to click over for the full dive in. In Nevada, state lawmakers have voted to remove urine testing from the tools police can use to test if a driver is too high on marijuana to safely operate a motor vehicle, leaving just blood tests as the only valid option. On Friday, the State Senate Judiciary Committee unanimously approved Assembly Bill 135, sending it on to the Senate at large for a vote. Since it was already passed by the State Assembly last month, if the bill makes its way past the full Senate vote, it'll head on to Governor Brian Sandoval for final consideration. And finally for today, we have a story that should serve as a stark reminder of why we're all doing what we do. Last week in Louisiana, a state Supreme Court justice blasted her colleagues for upholding an 18-year prison sentence handed down to a man for the possession of 18 grams of marijuana, or a little over half an ounce. Gary D. Howard was convicted of possession with intent to distribute by a jury back in 2014 and sentenced as a habitual offender due to some previous convictions on his record. Because of this, Mr. Howard was hit with an 18-year prison sentence that was upheld last week by the state Supreme Court. In her dissent, Chief Justice Burnett Johnson said the ruling was, quote, outrageous. There are many reasons to end the war on marijuana, but a man going to prison for close to 2 decades for having a half ounce of cannabis should be one of the main ones. Those are the headlines and news for the day. I'll be back with you again tomorrow morning with another information-packed episode of Marijuana Today Daily. But in the meantime, if you have any stories to share or feedback to give, zip us an email to headlines@mjtodaydaily.com. And while you're clicking around the interwebs, swing over to our Twitter account at MJTodayDaily and visit our website at mjtodaydaily.com to find links to all the news we cover. Thanks to our sponsor, our annual listener survey, which you should take today, and all of our awesome patron listeners for the support that makes this show possible. To join the illustrious ranks of the patron listeners yourself, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com and click on that big blue button at the top of the page that says Become a Patron. I'm your host, Shay Gunther. Thanks for tuning in, starting your day with Marijuana Today.
One take, Shay. One take.